All right, welcome to the next part of our Blender video. We're looking at object primitives um, in 3D. Now, pretty much the basis of many, if not all, 3D software is you have the option of adding object primitives. Now here I've outlaid quite a few of them, um, quite a few primitives. Essentially, in Blender you have these as your primitives. Now I'm going to start a new file. You have your circle, you have a plane, you have a cube, and you can always see the names down here, the base names. You have a UV sphere, an icosphere, a cylinder, a cone, and what they call a torus, which is kind of like a donut. Right, so we start a new file. Now, by default, we are greeted with a cube in Blender. From there, you can actually change the size of your cube by using the same transformation properties that we went through before, your translate, scale, and rotate. Now, if you want to add another object primitive, and one of the things about object primitives, essentially they're the basis of all complex three-dimensional shapes. If you look at things from creating a cylinder to a pyramid to a car, these are some of the object primitives that are used to create such complex objects. Right? So I'm going to just show you what they are and then kind of break down how things work when it comes to these object primitives. Right, so we have our cube. Let's add a few more objects. Create. I'm going to create a plane. And anytime you're creating an object in Blender, you can actually add a few options there. Now, if you move it before you add to your properties, then you could probably find a problem there. Right? So I'm going to move this and we can't change any more of those things. So next one is our circle. Circle by default, you probably won't see much of anything, but I'm going to change it. Well, let me just kind of hide this so we can see our that. I'm going to add our circle again. 1. By default, it asks you what's the radius. That means how big you want it to be, right? That depends on you. And fill type, meaning how is it going to fill in. Right now it's at nothing. You can choose end gun or triangle fan. I highly recommend choosing triangle fan because then you can work with triangles or tris and quads when you're fixing it up. You can also add generate UVs. That will come to another time when we're actually adding textures to our objects. The next one we can use is a UV sphere. UV sphere really is just a sphere that uses squares or quads as our mesh. So the reason why they call it a UV sphere essentially is easier to the UV mapping on it because of the way it is created. You can always change the segments, however, how many segments you want it to be. The more segments, the more detailed it is, and of course, the more memory it's going to take up. By default, you have a segment of 32 and you have rings of 16. That is totally up to you if you want to. You can always change the size as well. And you can always choose generate UV or align to view. Right? If we align to view, it's going to point towards what I'm seeing. So if I just change this around and kind of align to view, it's pointing at me again. Right? So I can align to view and I can choose a location. Let's say I want that X. I can always play with the location right there and even the rotation as well. Right? So those are some things you can look at. Let's add another one. And by the way, there's multiple ways you could add. When you go to your tools option, you see the transformation tools, but in the create section, that's the second one, you can find your object primitives. Also, if you want to add something else, you can choose add, and you can always add. Right now we're dealing with meshes, add different things, right? You also have additional objects such as curves, lamps, and other, right? So there's a whole bunch of things you can always add. So we just work with the interface here. You have UV, you have icosphere. Icosphere can be used to create things like footballs or soccer balls. We in Jamaica call them football because we use our feet. So let's say X is at 1 degree rotation or 0. We can always change the location. I'm going to move down the X axis and just put it right beside that one. You can always change your size as well, right? And subdivision count, depending on how you want it to work. right? So from even one subdivision to two. Let's add to our icosphere, we'll add a cylinder, and we just simply change the radius. Let's make one a drinking straw, and you can always change the size of your cylinders. I'll change the cap to triangle fan because that's what I like using, and I'll simply move it over along the x-axis, right? So that's there. Just going down the line, you can add a cone, end gun. No, I'm sticking with triangle fan because I'm a traditionally used to the triangle fan. All right, in time you're gonna understand what the triangle fan is. So I'm going to one. You can always change your radius one, which is that one, or radius 2, which is the top part. So that is completely up to you if you want to do stuff like that. You can always change the depth, how thick or how thin you want it, if you want to be like a pencil or a pencil crayon or something. And you can always just change a few options there or here. And let's play with the location as X. And we just move it over to the left side just so we can have that there, right? Let's add a few more things. Taurus, right now. So Taurus is that donut shape you can use to make a donut, essentially. You have operator presets. Right now it says defaults missing. There's nothing else for me to add really. Location is there. We can always change the location of it. I'm just going to move it to the left. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 grid spaces. We'll move it -7 grid spaces on that. So it should move right there. We counted 7, so the center of it's going to move to the 7th grid space from the center. You can always rotate things along the X, right? I can hold shift if I want to move it a little slower, or control for faster, right? There's Z as well. You can move it in steps. Major segments, you know, how much segments you want. Minor segments, what you want it to be. Of course, you kind of want to balance these out so it actually maintains a relatively smooth look. And those are your object primitives. You can always play with the radiuses. I'm not sure if it's radius or radii. You can always choose exterior, interior, radius like so, right? So interior, major, whichever one you want to do, right? Torus dimensions. And those are some of your basic ones. Now, one of the nicest little surprises that Blender has, and many other 3D programs have it, is that sometimes they provide you with one extra polygon that's just completely out of the ordinary. Some software uses a teapot. Blender uses a monkey. We call her Suzanne, as you can see the name there, Suzanne. Suzanne is a monkey. It's kind of like a little three-dimensional mascot for Blender, besides the cube, of course. And you can always move Suzanne around by just playing with it, just moving the price. So this is pretty much all the 3D objects that you're going to see in Blender that can be used to create something far more complex than what we're used to seeing. So any of these objects, if you can manipulate its mesh, you can get the results that you want. But you also have grid. Well, grid is kind of like a plane, except for the grid you have subdivisions that you can always use to kind of add a grid, and you can change the rotation and scale and such. So I'm gonna move this over here. All right, so that's what we have. That's our little lineup of our basic object primitives. And in the next video, we're going to look at editing some of these and then probably creating a very simple object just using a few things. All right, thanks for watching, and have a good day, night, month, year.